housing, which is this organisation, but we've also got the Golden Thread Initiative as well, where I'm chairing the asset and the survey information working groups. But there are 9 other working groups looking at things like health and safety, processes, legislation. So we're all working together to try and basically provide the underlying information. So the outputs from these workshops, we're producing from them as but what we're also then going to be doing is taking this information and putting them into data templates, which can then be shared and used so that people can then use this maybe as a checklist for carrying out works. Okay, that was it really. Richard?
Excellent, excellent. This is a slightly different format from that we've used before. It's very much an evolving process, evolving methodology, if you like. We've tried it with discussing a couple of asset types that are linked at the same time, and it's with mixed results. Hence the 3 documents you've got, which we've separated off in the hope that make it that bit more granular, might actually make it a bit more straightforward. So if we go straight forward onto the first one that we're going to consider, which is emergency lighting. Just if you could put that on the screen. Excuse me. And the first part of that, this is actually a new question we've put in, hence it's not got a number. What are the component elements of an emergency lighting system? Let's get the thing clearly defined to start off with. As you can see, we've got Jim's input in there: escape illumination, emergency illumination, emergency and task illumination, low proximity way guidance, escape signing. So has anybody got any thoughts on that? Anything they'd like to add into that?
Yes, Chris Watts here, chairing 5266. No problems, but the first 2, there are minor changes. The 0.2 lux on the centre line was the original light level, but that got superseded about 6 years ago with the last revision of the EN 1838. And that now gave 1 lux on the centre line, and that now is changed to being 1 lux on the width of the escape route, or it looks as though it's likely to be with the change. Is that coming? It's currently being revised.
Sorry, Chris, could I just clarify? Is 0.2 lux how that emergency lighting needs to perform from an illumination perspective?
Not anymore, no.
No,
it was a minimum requirement.
No.
Up to about 6 years ago, and then the European standard changed, and with the change of our legislation, we could no longer have the A deviation that we had for 0.2 lux. So we've had to come up to the European standard, which is the 1 lux. Okay,
so correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, we've got Joe Harris on the call as well from Sodexo, who's also from SIBSI. I would say that value there, Joe, would be in the attribute or the information side of things for an emergency light. The reason I'm asking that, Chris, is the intention of this particular question is to say, what are the component bits that go to make up an emergency lighting system?
I agree, and I think you're right. It's the wrong place for it to be. I did actually half an hour ago do some notes through to Mr. Stevenson, but obviously I should have circulated it through to other people as well. But I wasn't too sure of the format, and as I was going to be here, I thought sensible to do it.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
So
Right. So what are we saying? Are we saying?
Can I just to tell you the background of why I put this in?
Certainly.
Because
certainly.
it's still a note in 5266 Part 1 2016. And yes, it does refer to a 1988 number where it was suitable and sufficient illumination for escape. Now, there's provenance for that, lots of research, and other research has still said that if you really wanted a minimum number for suitable and sufficient, which is the regulatory reform fire safety wording for this type of element or arrangement within a building, then 0.2 lux is still a very robust number for the purposes of escape. Now, I'm not suggesting that there are not other risk elements that may want to increase that illumination, but I've tended to not necessarily put in here everything that happens to be in code, because there is a huge problem between what is currently in code and what is currently being done in practice, bearing in mind that particularly purpose-built flats has only just moved in to even the most minimum of these requirements. So that's the background to 0.2 lux.
Jim,
and I
Jim,
think it should be, yes?
Can I just say, sorry, but the question is about the components of the lighting system, not the design of the lighting system. So this information is not what's required here.
Okay, I'll take that.
Right, so what are we saying? That this is actually more, as George said, more about attributes rather than actual components.
Yeah, we've got a section for it, Jim. It's just a matter if we could if you could just cut those out, and Jess, if you could just cut those out, not the whole thing, or maybe the whole thing. Actually,
maybe every I made then.
It is the whole thing, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Down to luminaires
or batteries.
No, it's the first three.
Yes.
Right, chop those off just and put them in to where, George?
I think it's information.
Put them in information.
If I was going to make a comment on it, I wouldn't put them specifically somewhere because those are the design criteria. But the thing that I did notice was missing, there was nowhere to put the design itself. And if you're going to keep checking that it's still working to design, the design's got to be there somewhere.
Exactly.
If you put those 3 lines there, then if the actual standards change, you're a bit stuffed. But if you put the design in there, then you can actually check it against the current regulations.
That will be the information that we require, isn't it? Not in terms of the actual physical component elements.
Yeah, but I couldn't work out where you put that.
That would be an information. I think that would be an information. We need, what information do we require? We require the design.
Yeah, Peter, we can visit that, certainly. So have you copied that over, Jess?
Yeah.
You copied that into information?
Yeah, I copied it, and when we reach the information, I will best paste it.
Cool. Okay. All right.
Right. So in terms of the actual component elements, if we're looking at these here now on that listing, is there anything anybody disagrees with or wants to add to those?
I think perhaps centrally powered units.
Yeah, that's what
so central battery systems. We've got luminaires in, and there's a product standard for central batteries as well if we need those. And they're a component.
Yeah. That's why I put CBS in, Chris.
CBS, yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Apologies, yes.
Okay, so
probably needs spelling out though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The only bit I wasn't sure was technically batteries are in self-contained and CBS.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't work out whether you wanted it twice or you just wanted it once.
No, I think we want it twice.
Yeah, I think you're right. Peter, can I ask you, could you type that into the chat?
and then we can pick it up after.
Then just will actually cut and paste that straight into the document from the chat. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, is there anything else on that one that we want to add in?
What does control gear mean, please?
It's like the starter motor in an old light.
Right. Okay.
Well, no, it's the gear that goes between the main supply and the light source to make sure that you give it the correct supply. But it's also the gear. It's the control part that switches over when the mains fails. So it detects the mains has disappeared and switches across to the batteries.
Okay. So what one of the things here is also remember that this needs to be suitable. It needs to be used for probably emergency lighting systems that have already been installed for 10 years. So it's not all new at all. It's for existing buildings. So are there other component elements that you're aware of that maybe a maintenance organisation might come across that they would need to replace? Can you think of any?
Well, generators.
Okay.
Yeah.
Transformer.
Okay, so generators.
Yeah.
And transformer.
And transformers, yes. Okay. Good. Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Sorry?
Test switches.
Yeah.
Test switches. Can you type that in?
What about UPS?
Yeah, I would have thought so.
UPS.
Surely that would be a different component.
Transformer.
Well, I think that's in the batteries, the central battery systems. They're a type of UPS. They're a type of central battery system.
Yeah.
Okay. Joe, can you think of anything else from a asset management perspective?
Cables.
No, but I would add the UPS back in because I agree it could be inside the central battery system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cables.
And connectors.
Yeah.
Because if you've got a backbone with spurs going off it.
Good. Okay.
The other thing with cables would be the upgrade of making sure that the cable ties are up to date.
Okay.
Okay, I think we'll come on to that, won't we? Just do you want to move down now to the next question?
Yeah. Jim, would you put just cable ties into
cables? In with cables.
Put cables and ties.
Well, put cable fixings because it could be a tray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cable fixings.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, are there any dependencies on other systems? We've got smoke control, testing and maintenance, battery or generation, and perhaps links to fire alarm systems.
Well, I think we need fire. I don't know whether you meant fire alarms by smoke control, but I suspect you mean other things. So
yes,
we need a fire alarm to initiate the warning.
Well, we've got that. He's put that down. Perhaps links to fire alarm systems.
Oh yes.
Anybody got anything else to add to that?
Yes, I have. That there is another element of emergency lighting, and that's apart from just evacuation, it's to provide illumination in high-risk areas. So if you were standing next to a piece of rotating machinery, apart from being able to get out of the building, you want not to touch the rotating machinery. So we need to look at the high-risk areas.
Yeah. So what other system is that dependent on?
I did mention that, Chris, with the task lighting.
Oh, fine. Yeah. Okay. If we got task lighting in, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else?
In the smoke control, I said if the smoke control doesn't work, then the ceiling luminaires become logged, and therefore the effectiveness of
Yeah,
emergency
we're going to be moving. We're going to be moving down to that when we talk about risks.
Oh, okay.
Jim. So
That's
let's
why I put that independence. So
right. Any other dependencies on other systems?
What about lighting itself?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
The lighting system.
In what way, Joe?
The mains lighting, so we know what to initiate. So the emergency lighting should come on a failure of supply to the mains lighting system. So we need to know what the mains lighting system is and does.
Yeah, okay. So
you can have weird things like discharge lamps, which can have a 5-minute restrike time that needs to be compensated for by the emergency lighting.
Got it. Okay, good.
And
okay, anything else?
Lighting control system. There's a lighting control system. Can you initiate the lighting and can also initiate the tests?
True.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, we're cooking with gas here, aren't we?
We are, blimey. Just I can't keep up. Okay, anything else? Jack's flashing. Have you got something?
Nope.
Okay, let's if nobody's got anything more for that, let's move down to question 1A. So, what risks does an emergency lighting system mitigate? We've got trips, slips and falls, loss of way under power loss, orientation within the building for location of safety equipment, operation of panic hardware and security override, evacuation in the event of power failure, evacuation situation, signage and direction in mains live mode, and illumination in case of a stay put strategy.
That all looks good to me. Any other questions?
Yeah. For protection of safety systems, like for instance, the lift alarms. So if someone's stuck in a lift, they need to be able to see the emergency call button, and you need emergency lighting where that's received, so someone can go and get them out of the lift. So it's illumination of of other related safety systems.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, could you put that into the chat for me so Jis can, Chris, so Jis can cut and paste it?
Yeah, and I would include in that things like call points for emergency services.
Yeah. And so warning of refuge, when people are stuck in a refuge, disabled people in a refuge, it's to give illumination so people know where they are and that they can be safe until someone comes and evacuates them.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, if you can get that put down for us, then it's going to make it a lot easier. Fantastic.
What we're doing,
I think just illumination of related safety systems.
Okay. Yeah.
What we're doing with these is to also, we're part of the working group. We've got somebody looking at this from the point of view of tying this back to Uniclass, so that we can then standardize them.
George, you've disappeared. Hello.
Hi.
Well, we heard relate them back to Uniclass.
We're getting an echo. You can't mute, otherwise you won't be able to hear me. Yeah, so what we're doing, just to let you know, we're tying all of this back to Uniclass, that's what we're attempting to do, so that these can also become part of the standard risk assessments that are that we can then have solutions against the risk assessments. Anyway, that was that.
Okay, so has anybody else got anything to add in to question 1A?
Just one point, Richard. You can illuminate related safety systems by other methods than an electrical system, and I'm worried that we're going to get caught into our old bugbear here, that we're going to assume that we have to need a luminaire over absolutely everything in the built environment, because just to locate some of these things, it can be done with non-electrical systems. I won't say the fateful word to Chris, because I know it gets his hackles up, but photoluminescence is being used worldwide to do huge amounts of way guidance. And,
well, we've got within the document, apart from the answers to these questions, we're having an appendix which will have your comments. Well, it's more your comments sort of adjacently, if you like, things that don't directly answer the question, but give us some side information that's of value. So would you like to, Jim, put what you're saying into the chat, and then we can pick that up afterwards and get that into the appendix?
Well, if I knew how to do that, I would have no problems to do that. So
how to type in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, at the top of your screen, there's a bubble.
A bubble with 2 lines in it. Can you see that?
Next to the 2 people.
Yeah, show conversation. Has it got on it?
That's the one. That's the chat.
Right. Yeah, I've clicked on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so there'll be where it says to what does it say on there? Meeting chat. Type a new message. If you type it in there, that'd be amazing.
And then
it's sort of related to that. You do have portable battery systems such as torches.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I'm saying in terms of stay put strategy. If we're going to have in purpose-built flats a case of putting emergency lighting within the residential environment, we're putting a huge onus on these.
Yeah, well, the purpose of this question is what risk does emergency lighting system mitigate? So we need to include everything that would be included in that.
It doesn't.
If we caveat that with there are other options in some cases, that covers it, I think, don't you?
Well, I was thinking it's actually a component element.
That's what I was just thinking there, actually, Peter. I think that's something that we ought to add into components.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, what was that?
Well, a torch is a component of emergency lighting.
Oh right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. That's a good point. Could you make that? Could you put that in the chat for me, Peter?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to add in?
Just a thing on torches. Hi, my name's Gordon Rolfe.
Hello, Gordon.
Hi, Gordon.
So I used to work for Capita, and one of the things that came up after Grenfell was that Capita Simmons did a report on Grenfell Tower in 2005, 2006 on emergency lighting, and it was deemed so bad they recommended each tenant given 2 rechargeable torches. When they interviewed tenants who were still in the block at the time of the fire, they were never issued with them. So torches in residential situations, I wouldn't advocate.
Right. Yeah. I think possibly they weren't talking necessarily. It wasn't just about the residents have them. It's just for operatives possibly as well.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things we're looking at is that the fire wardens who could be shepherding people out to the place of safety, then need to go back perhaps quite often and inspect to check the building is empty. So that would be useful.
That would be something. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and that's
the other point about the torch, of course. The other point about a torch, of course, is it's mobile.
Yes.
You're taking it with you. Absolutely. Yeah, very good point. Okay, so anybody else got anything more they want to add into that one? Assuming not, I'm going to move down to question 1B. To what risks are emergency lighting systems susceptible as in themselves? Smoke logging, vandalism, lack of effective testing and maintenance, poor maintenance, for example, batteries not performing, poor design, not specified and located properly, and building churn without redesign.
Agreed.
Who wants to speak first? Anybody got anything to add to that?
Only
No?
just, I think the smoke logging is not necessarily the most important. I think if you've got so much smoke logging,
can I just say, don't take any of this in order.
No, it's fine. Happy with it. Yeah.
Anybody else?
My only comment is you can probably get rid of point 4 because it's covered by point 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. Did you hear that, Jess? Get rid of poor maintenance line.
Well,
Yeah, okay.
Don't get rid of the whole line. I think leave in
batteries not performing as an example. Yeah, that's fine. Anybody else got anything to add into that one? That seems as though we've pretty much nailed it.
I don't know, but it used to be also the delay in the cut-in of generators.
Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's still extended. What's the time now, Chris?
Well, it's 5 seconds.
All right.
But even that is quite a long period in darkness if you happen to be coming downstairs with a crowd of people.
Yeah. That's it. That's all right. Just like that, we'll understand it.
How is that?
The other one, if you're going to talk about historical systems, you had to hit exactly the right point in the main cycle for high pressure lamps.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would extinguish.
That was my restrike point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Restrike of some mains luminaires.
Okay. Could somebody type that into the chat, or are you doing?
Could you put it into the chat? Have you got that, Jess?
I think Jess is doing it, aren't you?
Yeah. If we can try and use the chat for this, it does make it a lot smoother.
Yeah, I didn't get what's the restrike of.
Could you, Chris? Could you just type that into the chat for me, please? Restrike of the luminaires thing. Then just copy and paste it rather than type it, and it can be moving down to question 2.
I've just put it in.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've seen Chris's typing; it's terrible.
Okay, thanks. Right, just move that down to question 2 for the second one. Excellent. Right. What information is needed about emergency lighting systems to ensure that they perform as required? Form a fire risk assessment, fire safety strategy. Competent electrical engineer. That's not actually. That's more in question 4, isn't it? But that's okay. Location, model, manufacturer, installer and date. Type of test, date and result and by whom, batteries, and other maintenance, what, when and whom.
So what you mean by that is when it was maintained?
Yeah, when it was maintained, what was changed or who did it.
Fantastic.
Right.
Good.
Yeah.
I think it's also got to be dealt with here very is the designer, the person that actually designed the system.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about if you've got an emergency lighting system, what about the number of lamps? The number of luminaires?
Well, from a calculation point of view, to do a desk calculation for illumination. What did you mean, the number?
Well, if you're doing maintenance, is it useful for a maintenance organisation to know how many are in a circuit? I would have thought so.
So you need the circuit
they need to check it against the original design. So yeah, they need to know what it actually. I'd suggest we need to make sure that we've got the logbook and the records are kept up to date. Because that's the bit that anyone going in afterwards can actually go back and check any changes that were made, or indeed whether or not it's there. To me, the logbook is actually vital as part of the maintenance schedule.
Yeah,
I think it'd be worth
without
actually mentioning it.
Without a doubt, I agree. How we get this into the document is Regulation 38 is going to become more and more and more as design drawings and then variations to drawings are going to be for this real holy grail lifetime of a building. We're going to want to know what's gone on before.
Yeah. Well, so just to
clarify, for each individual product, you need to know the circuit it's installed on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's on.
Why it was changed from the design before, whether stuff has been superseded, whether it's gone through the same test regime as the previous ones, from a perspective.
So electrical circuit identifier.
Agreed.
All the components would need to be identified for change.
Yeah, we've got a section on change management.
We're going to be coming on to that.
But the important thing here is that what we're doing here. You just talked about the logbook. The logbook needs to be, what we need to do is we want all this to be digital, so that you might produce a physical document, which is logical to have a PDF output, but we want all of the information to be machine readable. So what we really want to know is what information will go into that logbook. So what is it that we're actually recording? Has anybody got an example that they could share with us of what that logbook would contain? Because those are the questions we need to make sure that we're...
Yeah, I mean, 5266 gives the logbook, but also says that it's great. It's just as well that it can be recorded electronically. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So could you, if you've got 5266, which I don't have, and secondly, I wouldn't know how to interpret it probably if I had it. Is it possible, Chris, to share an extract of that with us?
Yes, so, we pulled the logbook and the test records out of the copyright, so I can happily circulate that round without any copyright worries for precisely this reason, which is so important.
You probably want from Annex H forward, Chris, so from the completion to all the other bits.
Yeah.
Can you share that with us? Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite extensive. So did you want me to do it now, or?
No, you can do it after.
I will at the termination of the meeting. Yes, I'll send it round everyone.
That would be excellent. Actually, we do actually have a new information site we're launching, so that will be a very valuable resource. Gordon just put in about redundancy, percentage of redundancy built into an area, which is an interesting point. That's excellent. Anybody else got anything to add into there?
Yes, I have. One of the changes that is currently underway within 50172, the EN on the application, is that there is looking at being a integrity requirement on central battery systems of limiting the number of luminaires to each fused element to 20. So if you do have a fault, you can lose no more than 20 luminaires. So there's an integrity element.
And it's to do with it's to do with testing and maintenance as well, so that
that's more of a
still operate. Good idea.
Yeah.
Do you want Chris? Do you want to type that into the chat for me? That point.
I think that's a really important bit of information, Chris, because if we can have that as a question as to how many are on this circuit or whatever the term was it's using there.
That goes back to what you were saying earlier, George, about the number.
Yes.
Yeah, the snag is, of course, that is something which is fine for a new installation, but existing ones, people are going to have a heck of a job trying to find that out.
But if it's important information, it might be something that's captured gradually, maybe when people are doing inspections or maybe placements. The idea of this is not that we're saying all of this has got to be ready now, but it's something that people can sort of navigate towards, maybe over a 3-year period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else got anything to add into here?
Yeah. So I think from an asset manager's side, when you've got, you know, manufacturer, model number, etc., that looks nice, but you know, if the manufacturer goes bust, you know, whatever, we don't actually have the information there. You know, I'd want to know what type of fitting it is. You know, is it an LED? What's the voltage? What's the wattage? So that when we're replacing it, we can go out and replace it first time, rather than having, you know, something sitting there not working because you know, someone needed to go to the, you know, go out, inspect it, find the right find out what they needed, go away, buy it, come back, fit it.
Yeah. So more granular asset information.
Yeah.
So
okay.
That Jack, would we need to, if we were to go back, Jess, could you go back up to components for the minute? Would we need to know that, Jack, for each of the component elements? I imagine we would.
Well, it depends. So quite a bit of that might come together. So obviously,
well, it might come together.
Source, you know, control gear, batteries, self-contained could all be in one system. So yeah, it depends. But what we're missing there obviously was battery illumination length. So do you need 24 hours, 72 hours? There are specifications in terms of, you know, design specification that we'd want to know that are not included there, and in terms of asset management.
Yeah.
So you want the technical specification sheet?
Well, yeah.
Well, the point is, Peter, yes, we definitely would want the technical specification sheet, which is probably a PDF. But what we want to do is, with this expert group, is to be able to identify from that specification sheet, which has maybe got 20 or 30 attributes on it, which are the 3 or 4, are there 3 or 4 absolutely key ones that we need to have as machine readable data and that don't need interpreting. So that's what we're trying to get to, so that we can automatically also test to see if that information has been provided. Because what we find is that different manufacturers have got data sheets lined up or presented in quite different ways. The same information might be described in a different way, and it then becomes very difficult to validate to see if it's been provided. So coming back to the point that you made, Jack, in terms of those, you just off the top of your head gave some examples of parameters. Would you be able to type those into the chat or let us have those? Because we can then add those to the requirements.
Yep. I would also say, in terms of setting this out as emergency lighting, you know, I think when you're looking at this, you know, I want it to be considered as lighting as a whole. You know, an emergency lighting being a function of that. If you're again talking about asset management, you know, I don't want to be looking at something, seeing I've got 3, you know, emergency lights in there and not knowing how many other lights. You know, if you're managing a building, it's part of, you know, something more, and understanding that is very useful.
Absolutely, that's a really good point. I think to some extent we've captured part of that earlier, haven't we? And said that we need to know the lighting, but I think from an asset management point of view, that's absolutely right. That it's a matter of being able to, you know, group elements in a way that is against a logical function, really, I suppose, is what you're saying.
Yes, so I mean, I would just have lighting as one thing, and then I would say that lighting either has, its own backup power supply in the form of battery, or is connected to something else that provides it, and that is what identifies it to the asset manager as being emergency lighting, rather than having it set alone as a separate thing.
Cool. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, if you could type that in, Jack, that would be really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Has anybody else got anything to add on to this listing? If not, we can move down to question 3.
Sorry, can I just ask, what about life cycle replacement? So, for example, would these things wear out after a period? Should we have expected life?
So it's no, well, it depends. Different types will perform differently. So some would be according to how many hours they're used, some to how many times they're switched on and off. So it's not. I would hesitate against having something like that.
All I'm thinking is, if we have expected life, then that could be described as maybe the number of or initiations, or it could be a period of time. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, but in terms of actual time, that it could be a bit meaningless. We don't know how often the light is going to be on. We don't know how many times it's going to be switched on and off. So in the same building, on a different floor, one could need to be replaced after 2 years, one after 12 years.
Perhaps the biggest problem is the effect of dirt and whether the signs or the luminaires have been cleaned.
Can be.
You and I know in the real world, I don't think light fittings ever get cleaned, but we all assume that they're going to be.
We've got maintenance personnel.
Yeah, we've got maintenance coming up. So anything else to be added onto this listing before I can move it down? Quickly, before George thinks of something. Okay, let's move down, Jez. Number 3. What tasks are required to ensure emergency lighting systems are installed, commissioned, inspected, and maintained properly? So this is your cleaning, Chris. Right, we've got an SFG20 example on the page. If you scan through that just to what's underneath.
Shall I just explain what I'm trying to achieve?
Oh, sorry, George. Yes, please do.
Yeah. What we're trying to do is to follow the example. Just can you scroll back up again, please? We're trying to follow the example that SFG20 do very well on standardizing maintenance, and do the same for installation, commissioning, and maybe recycling. So to have an explicit set of tasks that can act as a prompt for the qualified and competent installer or whatever to actually carry out work. Now, I don't think we're going to be able to do that now, but as an expert in emergency lighting, could you come up with a task list, a checklist, for want of a better term, to say what we should be doing with emergency lighting? Is that something that maybe we're not going to be able to do it in this meeting, but is there somebody within this group that would be able to contribute to that?
Yeah, most of that is covered in these in the log test records, and certainly the important ones all are, yes. So that the stuff I'll be circulating round will cover most of those points.
Would that include installation, Chris?
It covers the system at the end. So if it's been incorrectly installed, then that would have been identified that they're not performing their function. Where we get a problem is where you get user interfaces like them drawing a curtain over an exit sign or a call point. and that's the sort of idiot thing that is difficult to guard against, but at least it should be reported on, yes.
So when somebody's installing an emergency lighting system, generically, I mean, presumably each manufacturer has got their own instructions as to how that should be done. So they would train people, would they? And then they would have some level of steps as to what should be done. Is that right?
Well, the actual light fittings, there's not really any difference between those and a mains lighting luminaire. So people who've got the competence to install a mains luminaire have got the competence to install an emergency luminaire. But the problem all the time is making sure it's done in accordance with the design engineer's work. And as Jim said, that then in the life of the system, that people don't replace it with a totally inadequate replacement product.
Okay, so the change
positioning is so vitally important. You know, a positioning of 1 foot on either direction just absolutely messes the system up completely.
Well, that's fascinating. So what that means is that we need, because, you know, I come from the BIM world, and what we're supposed to be doing is making sure that that information is properly communicated, and certainly, particularly electrical installers, seldom follow what's actually been modelled, and often it's not modelled correctly.
Well, yeah, but then it goes back also to the fire safety strategy. Who's actually identified an escape route? Because if the escape route is not identified, what chance has the engineer got to position the luminaire?
Absolutely.
Yeah, certainly the commissioning section of these notes I'm going to send through you do cover are the exit signs located in the correct place and visible?
No, not the exit signs, Chris. Forgetting the exit signs, it's just the, you know, bearing in mind that in 5266, even a first aid box has got to be illuminated.
That's correct.
So, you know, unless one follows the other, then the likelihood is that you're moving the first aid box to a luminaire. If that's okay, that's okay. But if one is separate contractor to the other, then you've got a problem.
Absolutely. The other one, which is equally important, I think you'd agree, Jim, is extinguishers.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if people just put an extinguisher in, and the person fitting the extinguisher and the person fitting the emergency lighting often don't know each other, don't talk, and certainly you don't find extinguishers marked on design engineers' plans by and large.
Same with low-level disability call points.
Yep.
So in terms of
call points today,
so
I totally agree. Everything is about how that design is and how that drawing is then implemented into the building.
Absolutely. So in terms of the question, in terms of what tasks, then would the task be that the design, it seems to me that virtually everything you said over the last 5 to 10 minutes is all about following the design closely.
Yes. Exactly. And the design,
so that is the task
carried out by the risk assessor.
That is the task, to make sure that the design is followed closely.
Yeah.
That actually encompasses everything that we've been talking about.
That's right.
So what I've just posted in the chat is effectively the information that Chris is going to send you.
That is fantastic. Okay. Following the design is okay until the contractor turns up with LED lights, and the design specification was for normal lights or other than LEDs, and LEDs cast a different pool of light on the ground, and therefore they've got to be closer together.
Well, that's
the problem.
That comes down to not following the design then, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that case,
I'm not sure that
the installer's taking on design responsibility.
Absolutely.
In my view,
I think that's a very important point. Yes.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
I'll come back
I'm
to
not-
follow the design.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's a problem with LED per se. And one of the things that I would have put in the list of things that you need to know is the photometric characteristics, but I couldn't work out how on earth you are going to do that without a table. Because effectively you need to know the light distribution.
And I don't know how just spell that actually.
Yeah.
Funnily, I've just had exactly that because the colours of the walls are really, really important when you're dealing with light levels.
Would that not be down to the designer? Would that not be down to the designer?
It's about the total building management.
Could I just say that what you just said there, Jim, is a light bulb moment for me actually. Without the color of the walls, right? The finish and things like that. I've come across this before actually with lighting, but that's absolutely right. We need to have that in the information, don't we?
Well, the lighting level requirements ignore reflection.
Yeah,
so anything with reflection should be on top.
This is to do with luminance qualities, Chris, more than anything else, specifically for trips, slips and falls on staircases. It's to do with luminance. It's not necessarily to do with reflective light.
True.
Okay, so we're talking about, so in the information question 2, we need to put in there the luminance effect of wall covering, or just luminance effect.
That should be ignored in the design, because we never know how someone could come in and change the decor.
No, not in the design. In terms of question 2, the information we need to ensure that the product works properly. That's information we need, isn't it?
Technically not.
No. It's done irrespective. It's done taking the worst case of the colour of walls. So
right. So that's actually irrelevant then.
Assuming the walls are
if we're taking worst case, then we are considering it. It is.
Well, we either need to know it or we don't need to know it. Do we need to know it?
You don't. No.
Well, under health and safety, I think we do.
Okay. Yeah. Right. I'm gonna rule
arbitrate.
On it. We want it in. If people then want to disregard it, Peter, then they can do so. But there's obviously a view that it ought to be there. It doesn't mean that this is really a checklist, so it doesn't mean that we've got to use it. But
it's the option is there.
Exactly.
Okay,
that's how I see it. Yeah.
Okay, so
in which case can you say wall/ceiling? Could you say wall/ceiling? Because the only time that I would ever need it is if I'm doing an indirect emergency system, and then I'm allowed to take into account the effect of the first protection.
Jim, could you put that into the chat for me, citing wall/ceiling? And then just can pick that up.
I think it was Peter that said it actually, but yeah.
Oh, sorry, I beg you. Well, Jim was right.
Yeah, Peter was talking about it as far as contrast is concerned, and I just chipped in that greatly assists.
As long as somebody practices it, that's all we need.
Yeah. Somebody put in about the luminescence.
Yeah.
I think our view generally is we need a minimum requirement, and then things like reflectance, which can add to it, are a winning, and we should take advantage of it when we possibly can.
I think that's absolutely right. And if somebody could put that into the chat, we can get it into the document.
Well, you'll find it is actually in the 5266 documents that we'll be sending round.
Yeah, but I want it in our document before then, just so that we don't.
Fine, yeah.
Just to highlight it for us, Chris, so we don't miss it.
The difficult.
I'll write something.
That's brilliant. It's just when I'm putting this all together later on, I just don't want to miss something like that out.
No,
as you can appreciate. Okay, is there anything else we need to get in here? Question 3, tasks.
Okay, so we're going to have some of those in the logbook. Okay, I think we move on to 4.
Right, let's move down to question 4. which is about training and competence.
Yeah.
For Rochester.
The heading got missed out, Richard. I noticed that earlier. So.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Right, that's question 3. Where's question 4?
Keep going down. Stop. Yeah. Go up. Yeah. Okay. Just please go up. Okay, stop. When I say stop, Jess, go down.
Slowly.
Stop. Okay.
That's right. Okay. Right. So this is around competence and training, George.
Yeah. So the point about this is obviously we want people to be competent to actually carry out the works, right? But what's become clear is that although there's great industry level accreditation and training, that there's also the need to have manufacturer specific information as well. So in terms of emergency lighting, is there an industry body that does training?
There are 2 I'm aware of, ICEL and FIA.
Great. Okay. Would you mind?
Oh, and SIBSI. Sorry.
Yeah.
And SIBSI. Yeah. So
yeah.
3.
So they're all producing UCAS. UCAS accredited. Whatever.
Yeah. Effectively, they're part of degree systems that BAFE are doing.
Cool. Okay.
Okay. Excellent.
FRS, the FRS and the alarm people get involved with that as well today.
Well, the fire side, yes, they do. But so the FIA do fire alarms and emergency lighting, but there are some fire people who do fire alarms as well.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So does that cover that, George? Do you think?
I think so.
I think so. Yeah. With what we've got, let's down to question 5, which is change management. Now, we've already got a lot of learnings from other meetings and groupings on that, but is there anything specific to emergency lighting that needs to go in there?
Has anybody had a chance you might not have had a chance to read this because I only sent it out last night, but principally what we're saying is that as far as change management's concerned, one of the big challenges is that design is done at maybe an initial level up to stage 3. It then goes into detailed design where change takes place, and then when contractors then procure, things might get changed again. So what we're broadly saying is that what we want to do is have an adequately clear and specific set of requirements, which can then be progressively updated as things are suggested through the technical submittal process, or as one of our previous contributors has called it, which I thought was a good one, was technical deviation. So in other words, where you're deviating from what the original design specification was. Now, to an extent, what we're saying is that the design specification should not simply be, would something like MBS Chorus be used to do a specification for emergency lighting, or would it be something else?
Well, my experience with NBS is that it's woefully out of date. I hate to chuck that in, but it certainly is in my expertise.
I agree. The requirement in 5266 calls that photometric that evidence of the photometric performance has to be given as part of the completion documentation and handed over to the customer. So from then on, when you've got that, the replacement of any of the components can be done and checked against that information to make sure that the photometry is the same. And then in terms of the product standard, that will check that the changeover time and the duration are the same and the specification are the same. So the facilities are there for people to do, but I would agree that it's woefully undone a lot of the time.
So in that example, Chris, where you say it's evidence of photometric performance, is that something that could be done when you're doing an initial generic, relatively generic level of design? So maybe at stage 3. Are you familiar?
Yes. I mean, typically they're done either from spacing tables, which are relatively easy and anyone could do, or from a computer design of the whole lighting installation. And that requires a fair bit more skill to be able to do. But in either case, you would be able to replace a component and check that the performance was not eroded by the change, the substitution you've done.
So the performance, therefore, can be related back to an individual component?
Yes, it is. The luminaire specifically, if we're looking at the light level, it's the luminaire, and that the performance of the luminaires are part of the product's tests that are done by, say, BSI Test House doing it. They come out with the photometric information that enables you to check that the data is met.
So the question I've then got on that is, because if I'm looking at something as an asset manager, and I want to know that one of the problems with the performance specifications that I've seen with product information is that what they're doing, they're testing against a test standard. So what they're doing is they're often testing against a set of criteria, and they say, yes, I achieved that minimum level. Yeah. Now, that may not be the case with emergency lighting, but I've come across that before. Whereas what I think we need to do is, if there are going to be 100 emergency lights in a building, we actually want to know, of those 100 lights, how each one of them that's been installed is expected to perform, so that if I'm going to replace one of them, I can replace it with a product that. So is it reasonable for us to ask at that level for that performance information?
Yes, and there's a relatively simple way to do it, which is from a spacing table, which gives you the distance apart. So while I don't believe many inspectors are competent to measure light level, most of them are perfectly competent to measure distance.
Right, this information should be in question 2, shouldn't it? If it's information we need, we should be talking in question 5 about processes and methodology. How do we actually do that?
I think you're right, Richard.
Chris,
I'm not saying we don't need to talk about it, but I'm saying it needs to go in the right place.
Sorry, the one thing that you need to know before any enforcing authority puts any light meter on it is that who's decided what light level should be on the floor. Now,
we're not actually talking about that in this question. This question is the methodology of how we measure change. Is it the change management?
I know, but if we measure the luminaire, a particular luminaire may give you the 1 lux that was designed, but now it's changed to 5 lux. So unless someone gives you what the light level there is expected in that particular area as a function of the risk assessment, then you're testing against what? You're testing against something that was maybe done.
Changed.
Yes.
So it is a change you're talking about. I say, yeah.
It's a variation. It's a variation. This is why you can't give a certificate to conform to 5266 Part 1 2016, because automatically you read page 1, you're into the areas where the system is a variation as a function of the formal risk assessment.
Absolutely, Jim. But what we're trying to, which is exactly what we're trying to answer here, is how do we manage that?
Yeah, okay. Well, as I say,
it's not how do we get the information, how do we
I
manage
agree with Chris. There's very few people that can actually work a lux meter properly.
Yeah. And I would agree with Jim that when the change is made, really you need a design engineer to check whether that change in engineer is adequate, not specifically to a light level, but whether it's appropriate to the application and gives the safety that's needed on site and against the risk assessment.
Yes, and it's not the engineer, when he comes on site, is not dictated to check the rest. If he's got a faulty luminaire, that's his job, just to do that one luminaire. But he should be looking at the whole interaction, including the distance between luminaires, to do his job properly.
Yeah, I can understand that, and it's nice to say, but in practical terms, you know, we're looking at fire safety for a whole building here and all the different elements. You know, the costs for asset management are going through the roof if every time you're going to change a light, you're getting an engineer to look at the whole thing. You know, I agree with what George is saying there. You know, what we need is a specification that someone can pass over to a contractor to say this is it, and you know, whether it's, you know, setting out that kind of minimum design criteria in a simple way. Otherwise, people just won't follow it because it's too hard and it's too much or it's too expensive. So it's good to ask for all these things, but I think there's a risk of going too far in that direction and then people just not following it at all, which I think is the situation we're in at the moment.
Okay, so in terms of the question, in terms of the actual question, which is question 5, which we're talking about how to manage change, not what the change is, how do we manage it?
Richard, can I just say, so just reinforcing what Jack's saying there, that's once the building's been done, right? So if you're going to, what we need to do, exactly what Jack said there, is what we need to know is what was the final decision that the designer made for that particular product, and that product performance.
Well, also, George, I mean, we've got you know, if what is it, 80% of you know, the buildings in 2050 are already up. You know, the main part of this work will be for existing assets.
I agree, but
one of the things you're going to have to consider in terms of data management is if you change something, effectively for the original product, you probably need something like a photometric file. Now, if you change that original product, you need information on that new product with its photometry, but you need to keep the original one until you change the design.
Yes.
Because that is the product that was used for the design. So you always have a historical element in it until you do a complete redesign.
Yeah.
Okay, so all I was going to say, and obviously Richard quite rightly is trying to move us on because we've got 2 more of these to do. But this is the most important one in my view. That's why I'm very happy to let it roll. But just to pick up on what you were saying, Jim, what we're saying is that when you're actually doing a new build, then what we're saying is, or you're actually changing it for something else, then that would be going through a technical submittal process. And in the technical submittal process, normally the design consultant would be brought into that equation. So if you're swapping from one solution that was the design solution, if the contractor comes along and says, I've got a cheaper or more available product, then that would necessarily have to go back through the technical submittal process, and therefore there should be due consideration by the designer.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without a shadow of a doubt, that's a full survey and full.
I think you'll find we have actually got that on the list, George.
We have, yeah, no, I agree.
And I think coming back, I don't know whether somebody typed it in, but that's also about the time cycle and time life of these arrangements.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Let's just take purpose-built flats, because, you know, we've still got to unravel the needs for people with disabilities. Well, that system can change on a monthly, on a a daily basis, and those needs are either local or global. And so from that perspective, it is a changing and a moving.
Absolutely, and the change management system has got to change itself. I think it's got to be a moving body itself. I'm going to call a time on this one, because I think we've got from what we've already done and what you've added into that now. I think we've got enough for question 5. So unless anybody's got any particular argument on that, I'd like to then move through onto the next document.
Yeah, which
is fire signs.
Okay.
Okay, just
hopefully they should be a little simpler.
Yeah, these will be a little more simple. I think we started with a more complex one, didn't we?
Well, but illumination is so fundamental to this section.
Absolutely, and it's complex, isn't it, as well? With just the things you brought out about luminescence earlier on is. Okay, right. So the component elements of a fire sign: mandatory instruction, hazard location identification, prohibition instruction, escape route identification location, firefighting equipment and alarm location, life-saving appliance, emergency egress and panic security device ID, fire and rescue deployment information and flat location, low proximity flat and floor number identification. That obviously doesn't apply to every single one of them, but it's a pretty comprehensive list.
Well, can I just roll back? Is that actually right? So the fire sign is the fire sign. It might be a fire sign that's a static or a standard one, or a fire sign that's illuminated. Are there any other types of fire signs?
Well, I don't know this definition fire sign anywhere. I don't know where it's come from. It's not.
Neither do I. I mean, to me, if you put safety signs, that would be a lot more relevant, perhaps.
Well, specifically in this context, we do have a definition for fire safety sign.
Yeah.
So that sits better with me.
Okay, just can you change that to fire safety sign at the top?
But no, my problem with this list is most of it is design. So most of these aren't components, they're design.
I think that they do need to be moved.
But they're components of a system. So, pardon?
They're not components of a system, most of them.
If you're going to buy a replacement, so if you buy a sign, what I'm thinking of there, Jim, is that if you've got an illuminated sign, then you've probably got some bolts that bolt it to the wall. You've got a case. You've got some sort of lamp in it. That's what I was thinking of.
You're talking about one specific sign, but can I just say that every sign needs to be illuminated?
Yes.
It gets its illumination from a variety of sources.
I have to say, the point of a sign is to communicate. And
so it has to be illuminated.
Yeah, it's to communicate, and communication is a message. So I can understand why whoever wrote this put the message as part of the component, because they will be different.
Okay.
I think actually there is a difference between what we recognise as being the fire exit signs and other signs that may require illumination, Jim. Something like, say, an acid bath. Now, that acid bath, depending on how it was, the situation, may or not need to be illuminated in emergency, and there should be a risk assessment to decide whether it is. But against that, the exit route.
I agree with you.
Okay, well,
I agree with you, but the words in the legislation say a trip hazard is still a trip hazard in sudden power failure. So all safety signs must be suitably and sufficiently illuminated so they can be seen under those circumstances. Now, whether you have that by emergency lighting or you have it by normal lighting, by reducing the risk that nobody's going to be there, then that's fine. But you need to carry that out.
Okay, well, if we're going to say it needs illuminating, let's see what the components are.
That's a good point.
There's no standard for any of those signs at all. There's only guidance for those types of signs under 9999. So they don't sit in the legislation for the health and safety signs and signals.
I'm not asking for the legislation. I'm asking for your expert opinion, Jim.
Okay, well, I don't recognise any of the designs. And so
they're examples that have been put up. Just don't worry about those as specifics. That's somebody else's note. Think of it as somebody else's notes. They're just showing some examples. In terms of fire safety signs that need illuminating, what are the component parts?
Oh, the component parts of these signs?
No, well, of any fire safety sign that needs illuminating.
Right. Let's just take the fire exit sign. The component parts are the directional arrow, the graphical symbol, and the supplementary text. So to illustrate that, if you bring those drawings.
Yeah, what about the actual lighting of it?
The illumination is either covered under power loss conditions by emergency lighting, electrical system.
Right, it's all part of that system.
It may be suitable and sufficient to use photoluminescent materials for the illumination of these to, again, a degree of luminance performance, or it may be suitable to have them illuminated under borrowed lighting.
Okay, could you type that into the chat for me?
Where would you like that?
Type it in the chat and just sort of copy it over, because I think you've pretty much summed up the lighting side of this question. Has anybody else got anything to add onto that? I would think probably not.
Other than I would agree, and that within emergency lighting we define if they can be either internally or externally illuminated signs, and as long as Jim says you can see them.
Exactly. I don't think we need to get bogged down on it, really.
And BS 5499 Part 4 and Part 10 do the same.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I think that covers that then, doesn't it? Let's move down to if you can do that, Jim, that would be fantastic. If we move down to the next one, Gister, are there any other systems dependencies on other systems? That would be illumination, won't it?
And we've got that.
And we've got that. Let's move down to one.
Fire extinguishers, first aid, all the other life-saving systems depend on good signing.
Yeah, no. This is the other way around. Question 1A: What risk does fire signage mitigate? Unfamiliarity of built environment. Good point. Orientation, loss of time.
Hazard.
Yeah, hazard. Yeah. Can you just type that in, just a hazard?
And then what's the obviously the prohibition of activities that would increase risk?
Yeah, that's a good one.
How about location of safety refuges, Jim?
Yeah,
good one. I'll tell you what, Chris, while Jim's typing what he's typing, could you type that in for me? Just has got the prohibition of activities. Can you type in the locations?
Yes, it was.
Jack, have you got anything to add to this on?
Nope.
Good.
No. That's what we like.
Next.
Okay, down to 1B. To what risk are fire signage susceptible? Well, I'm going to add vandalism in there immediately. Smoke logging, incorrect application, incorrect design. Vandalism.
If we could just go back to while I was typing that into 1A, obviously there's the mandatory instruction under building regulations for compartmentation. Fire door keep shut, fire exit keep clear.
Very good point. Very good point.
Construct automatic fire doors.
Yeah, compartmentation, Gister, on that question 1A. Compartmentation. Just put compartment. I'll know. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Okay, risk successful. Put vandalism in there. Yeah.
Funnily enough, I don't know who's experiencing that, but in the last 5 years anyway, I've been doing so much work in social housing, I don't actually see as much vandalism on the safety signs as I see them on the emergency lighting. They're more likely to rip the bulkheads off on the walls than they are to take down a no smoking sign. Anyway, just an observation.
Yeah, no, fair comment. Yeah.
I would have said poor maintenance, because people, they'll either get dirty or people will go past them.
Yeah, this
poor
is
maintenance,
one. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, the other thing, of course, is that fire signs are susceptible to bad application and bad installation. I've seen
we've got incorrect application.
I see signs that say do not use the lift, and there's no lift in the premises.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's application. Put installation, bad installation in there.
And the big one, of course, is people put a fire exit on the door, which may well be open.
Yeah, exactly. Incorrect. On the other hand, maximum height is 2 meters, and I've seen illuminated signs stuck on the ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that obviously comes into application. Anything else that's glaringly missing on that one?
Yeah, could you just we changed it to fire safety signs, so if we could...
No, we've changed it at the top. Don't worry, that's going to be changed all the way through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is very much a draft.
I'm getting the feeling you want to get rid of me.
No, not at all. It's just we've got so much to go through. I'm trying to make sure we get as far as we can.
Well, where have we put this location of safety refuges? Again, I think that's vitally important, including the call points, the disability assistance call points.
Yeah, I agree, Jim. I was just, just putting it. So, in fact, on the one above, location of safety refuges and their communication systems.
Yeah. There's a new standard coming out for this. So in terms of being able to address
excellent
firefighters and stuff like that.
Yeah. Right. Let's move down to question 2 now.
What's icon definition mean?
Sorry?
That's in the wrong place because I said it wrong. It's part of your product components. Basically, you've got to know what the icons are on the
symbol. You mean the graphical symbol? Yeah, and meaning. Yeah. I like that one. You've got graphical symbol and meaning.
Yeah.
Effectively, if you ever want to replace the product, you want to know what the symbol was.
Absolutely. Exactly. Okay, question 2, just so. What information do we need about fire signs to ensure they perform as required? George?
Yeah, basically what we want here is for this to be as machine readable information if possible, so that we can then, just like we did earlier. So is there information, would the size of the, I suppose you want to know, we've got the location there, the XYZ, manufacturer, model number, installer. What was the other thing? Did somebody mentioned on the previous one an additional thing? I can't remember what that was. It doesn't matter. So, are there any? Would the size of it? Or
yes, the size is very important.
Okay,
and it's covered in those standards. It's covered completely in the standards above.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. The point is, what we don't want, Jim, is for people to have to read the standard to know what to do. What we want is an explicit set of information for that particular product that was installed. Do you understand me?
Well, I do, but then you just take the tables out of the standard with the illumination, and then you can work out viewing distances for all of it.
No, sorry.
It's a very comprehensive section as part of the standard, not an annex, as part of the standard that gives viewing distance, whether it's internally illuminated, whether it's externally illuminated, whether it's a safety sign.
No, but what you're talking about there is the information that somebody that's doing the design and the selection of that fire sign for that particular location, right? Now, when all that's been done, the building's been handed over, right? The information about that particular selection, it's gone through the process. What we want to know is when we then need to replace it, how would we replace it? So we'd want to know its dimensions, wouldn't we? We don't want somebody, as Jack was saying earlier, we don't want somebody that's replacing one sign for an identical sign to have to go and read the standards to figure out what the size of it is.
I understand that, yeah.
Or indeed have to go to site to measure it.
Well, it's on the drawings then, isn't it?
I don't know. Not if you don't ask for it, Jim.
Well, it would be because it's a Regulation 38 arrangement. So all of that detail would be on the drawings.
Well, you can't just assume that gets passed across perfectly and is maintained and everyone has access.
It has to be now. It's a lifetime building. It has to be. This is an arrangement. So how can it be maintained if the detailed specification is not handed over on completion?
So we're not dealing with purely buildings that are being handed over. There is a large amount of existing stock where we need to do this work.
Loads of people are doing it, recording it on asset registers, the size, all of those things, the manufacturer, because there's a world of choice between perspex, photoluminescence, engraved, all these other things have to be recorded somewhere.
And that's
we're trying to help simplify that process. And when we were talking about change management earlier, define what that process needs to be, because at the moment, not only are loads of people aren't doing it. And a lot of people are doing it, but doing it under different methodologies. We're trying to give some sort of common standardization to the process.
Yeah. Just one point on this. What happens when the building actually changes? So within the sizes of the signs, one of the other bits is the cosine of angle that you're looking at the sign. So if the escape route within a bigger open area changes, then effectively the sign size ought to change on a new installation. Are we saying once a new installation's been done, that's it? Or are we saying that any changes in the building need to be result in updated changes in the sign sizes? I don't have a view. I just
that's part of change management, isn't it? Let's just focus on this question where we are at the moment.
Right, yeah.
And just to reinforce that, so Jim, the point that you're making in terms of that information being collected, I can promise you that a lot of the people that are doing those surveys and those asset inspections that you've referred to, they're exactly the people that we need to give these data templates to, because they don't know what they should be collecting. It's very, very variable. So what we really want to do is say, right, for this fire sign, what information should be collected? What's important to be collected? And does that make sense? Without having to, for a survey firm that's pricing up a job and they're putting together a survey data template to capture asset data, they'll probably simply say, how many signs are there? Yeah.
And that's currently how the quotation has been done, yeah. And it's not right. It's wrong.
Exactly. That's why we're trying to fix that.
And the illustrations of that stuff that you've shown me, or Joanne's kindly posted, is the one reason why all of that stuff is being procured in thousands and thousands and doesn't even conform to anything.
Is there an equivalent that is compliant?
Well, it may well be compliant with somebody's design, because obviously someone's designed it, but it's not, doesn't conform to any recognised guide or standard.
And sorry, I'm pushing here. Can you provide an alternative that does comply?
Yes.
Good.
But it's but I'm not a manufacturer, so somebody can ask me to give them some advice about what they should do to tenants about instructions in respect to fire. But in purpose-built flats, it certainly wouldn't be putting these types of things up against fire alarms. So, and as for that, showing different types of fire extinguisher, I mean, that is just a fire extinguishers companies wanting to sell some signs. That's not a system, is it? Why would you want to put up all that information when you've chosen one particular or two particular fire extinguishers within an environment where you know it's appropriate for the type of fire they're fighting? So this is my angst against an industry.
Okay, so but in terms of where we are at the moment with question 2,
yeah,
what other information do we need to ensure that fire signs perform as required?
Well, I've written what I feel is appropriate for any estates management, because these are not product standards. They're how you do exactly what that question asks, because it starts off with asking the simple question, do we need any of them? For a start. So, I mean, and that's what every building manager should be asking. Do we need any of it? Can we do it another way? Yes, we can. But do we want to? And then who we should engage. That's why I put down most important thing is the tenant engagement in this, because this is a communication exercise and we need to communicate. We need to tell them about the emergency lighting, what's likely to happen in a stay put scenario, or
absolutely. And no, absolutely, but we're not talking about sort of like process at the moment. It's purely about the information about fire signs to make sure they work properly.
Are there any other parameters we need to know about the fire sign? Do we not want to know what
physically about the fire sign?
Do we want to know
purpose and wording?
Purpose and wording.
Good.
Yeah. Jack, do me a favour. Would you type that in the chat, because I think just has got knocked off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Effectively, it should be called an ISO 7010. So it should have an icon identifier.
It's not an icon, it's a graphical symbol. And 7010, ISO BS EN 7010 is a directory of graphical symbols for which a known meaning has been assigned. So it's not how to use signs at all. It's just a huge directory of registered safety signs. And I had to go to the High Court to ensure that I could say the word registered.
Well, I think purpose and wording covers that, doesn't it? Is there anything else anybody?
Can I just suggest wording is perhaps the wrong word, because a lot of them are symbols. Legibility.
Well, it says purpose. I think purpose comes. Symbols come under purpose, don't they? So I think we're going to leave that as we are. Let's move down now onto question 3.
Okay.
Just to come in, there we go. Excellent. What risk?
Sorry, can I just go back, because I do want that graphical symbol put in as a very important part.
Jim, just put it in the chat and we'll incorporate it. We promise.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3. Back to the tasks. We remember the SFG 20 example.
So in terms of installation, I mean, I imagine that the installation is there a recognised method by which you install signage? If not, let's move on.
Method.
Yeah. Okay, let's move down to question 4, Jess.
Just so that you know, method is material appropriate for
Yeah,
fix.
fair comment. Yeah, depending. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Question 4, Jess.
There's no such thing as a non-illuminated sign, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. So
Oh, right. This is the one. Yeah, this is the one without the number. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of competency, is there any authority that would be overseeing the fire safety signage?
Cinemas and theatres mightn't they, Jim? They're the only people I know really who look at the needing a maintained sign, and that's part of their licensing agreements.
Yeah, it's the Theatre Technicians Union.
Yes, yes.
Right. So that's not relevant to us, is it?
Okay, so let's leave that one.
Let's move down to question 5, Jess.
I don't think we need to spend.
I don't think. Yeah, you're right. We don't need to do question 5 because I think that's comprehensively covered already. Let's close this one off and move on to the final document, which is.
Could anybody provide any manufacturers of signs? Because that's something that somebody could do.
Well, the thing is, yes, the Health and Safety Sign Association has some good members, and obviously, as far as that's concerned, I've been associated with it, and I've been banging the drums of the stuff that I've been talking to you for 30 years now.
Yeah,
I was, and to a certain extent on a technical basis, still associated with a company called J-Light PLC that manufacture photoluminescent signs and photoluminescent signs for the aircraft industry and for the World Trade Center after the requirements for these types of systems in New York on trains and marine application, and of course manufacture photoluminescent fire safety signs for the industrial commercial environment.
Okay, Jim, could you just drop that into the chat at some stage, or maybe afterwards, just if you've got a contact. Look, I'm pushing this along because obviously we've only got 20 minutes left. I've found this very, very helpful, by the way. So thank you very much for your time. The knowledge here is tremendous. It's difficult to. I mean, Jack, for example, I imagine that you're actually at the cutting edge of this, aren't you? So, right.
Okay.
One of the with social housing to overcome quite a lot of the problems that you've addressed or you are addressing, and so I'm seeing it firsthand. I've for the last 18 months been looking at exactly this environment. So for me, it's if I'm helping, it's fine.
You certainly are. You certainly are, Jim. Make no mistake about that. What are the component elements of a lightning protection system?
No idea.
Does anybody actually know on the call?
Yeah, I think I'd probably know enough to keep well away from it. As a fire risk assessor, I used to avoid lightning like there's no tomorrow. I mean, I know the principle of the earth, the protection you get, but the actual detail of it is within the industry and is very carefully. I think it's the people you need are WJ Furs, is it? They're probably the industry experts on lightning protection.
Okay.
I put somebody in touch with you, George. I put somebody in touch with you who I met and in a presentation on lightning strikes, but also may have good expertise in adaptive signage, which is now being adopted by Greenwich University, a company called Light for Life. I don't know whether you recall them getting in touch with you, but they are doing quite a number of lightning system checks for orbit housing, and I think it's oh, that's my Alzheimer's. I can't remember, but it was a really, really informative thing, but I wouldn't want to talk on it.
Right, can I suggest something? If this is as highly specialist as it seems,
It
we
is
haven't
very.
got anybody
Yes,
specialist, on the call, is there actually any value in us pursuing this?
No,
I can't do anything.
No, okay. That being the case, we're gonna leave this one until we've got an I think it's too specialist, isn't it? There's no point having a crack at something. We're not about.
The only comment I will say is, when it comes to lighting and we're talking about lightning protection, we specify surge protection devices.
Right. Yeah.
And they do a similar thing for such things as computer systems. But after that, I know the ones you stick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know what you stick on lights, but I don't know what you stick on anything else whatsoever.
Sure. I think this is very, very specialist, and I think we need to leave it.
And taking on board at that point, fire alarms also are susceptible to lightning strike.
Yeah, well, anything electrical is susceptible.
The smoke detectors are particularly prone because the air's ionised.
Ah, okay, right. So we've established it's very important, and we've established we can't do it. So we need to get somebody who can do it. We can't do that at 5 minutes' notice, so we're going to have to come back to this at another time, which is fine. Identifying a problem is halfway to solving it. So that being the case, after all that, we have 15 minutes. George.
Well, really, just thank you very much, everybody. What we're trying to do here is, as people who are by no means we've just got no knowledge of these areas at all, but I've gained a lot of knowledge over this last few weeks on AOVs and cavity barriers and things like that. And what we're trying to do is build the same sort of information base that we've got on those other asset types. So it's our intention that when we've tried to distill this, and obviously we've been running quite hard to try and capture the information within this couple of hours, we'll be coming back to you. I hope that's okay, to sort of run past you our interpretation of things, and then that information will then go through into the Golden Thread Initiative team, and then when they've reviewed it, it will then go into the MHCLG. So that's the cycle of what we're doing here. What we're also doing is trying to capture the knowledge of the industry as to how we can avoid problems that undermine the measures of protection that are being put in place. So within BIM for Housing, we've set up an environment called Black Box, which will allow people to contribute experience that they're coming across, so that as an industry we can start to engineer them out. So and discuss them as well, so that there's going to be the means for people to debate things. So the conversation we were having earlier about the colour of paint, for example, I remember having a conversation a few years ago with Arup, and they would not provide the information about working on schools, and they wouldn't provide the information about how their lighting solution would perform. And it was a PFI, and the construction company that was employing them, I was representing, was under penalties if they didn't achieve certain lux levels. And Arup were very resistant to actually say that their design solution would achieve whatever lux level, 600 lux or whatever at that area. And the reason they gave was because we don't know what colour the paint is going to be in the room. And that was probably quite a reasonable thing. But my view is that they should then specify what type of paint and finish and colour their performance was measured against. So I'm very receptive to what you were saying earlier, Jim.
Thank you. Well, again, when I look at lighting levels in industrial and commercial environments, I am appalled at lighting under ordinary conditions. For even the most basic work that Tranta did in the States on slips, trips and falls on stairways, I am really surprised that we haven't seen a number of accidents. And in the social housing, the more I take my light meter with me, the more concern I have is under ordinary conditions, not on sudden power loss conditions or emergency lighting conditions, under ordinary conditions, even more exacerbated by the delays on PIR and movement designs within the means of escape. And these are all afterfits, after ideas, because we, with all due respect, Chris, you'll have to agree, we never considered that any light, ordinary light, would go out in the means of escape, did we? On a trip switch and need to be activated by a movement of a door or something. It's crazy.
Yeah, what worries me is you go out the escape route and you trip over the rescue sleds.
Yeah, yeah, or exactly, or the
absolutely true.
Yeah, again, even at Luton Airport, I did nearly exactly the same thing with a parade mobility wheelchair. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's there, and I hope the project can do something about it. My only problem I have is when I first got involved with BIM, I tried desperately hard to rewrite the specification for fire safety signs within the national building specification, and trying to deal with REBA, and then them wanting £12,000 for someone to go through product selector before they would even talk about trying to put the technical aspects together properly. So I hope you do succeed in getting this in the public domain, because it is needed.
Yeah, most definitely. Jack, have you got anything you want to ask these guys?
No.
Good. You find it useful?
I've just chucked a reference into the chat. There's a SEND technical specification, BIM properties for lighting, and it includes emergency lighting.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. Joe, from the maintenance side, is there anything you've got, any questions you've got of our colleagues?
No, I think that's all good. Thank you.
Good. Well, I think, Richard, we're ready.
Yeah, I think we're quite surprisingly going to finish early. I don't know how that happened, really. we ran a race and finished ran 100 meters and finished the marathon. So, well, yeah, we got struck by lightning. Well, obviously, fantastic. We're going to get this written up and, as George said, interpreted, contextualized, and we will get the draft documents out, draft reports out to you to have a look through and add further input should you wish. Or we're not looking at, this is never going to be a finished document. We're calling them documents for want of a better word, reports for want of a better word. They're going to be on the BIM for Housing Black Box website and reviewed regularly. Anyone can comment, anybody within the industry can comment on them, suggest changes, suggest improvements, suggest additions, and they'll be considered by a panel, and the thing will be amended on an ongoing basis. So it's very much a dynamic document, which it needs to be, obviously. Everything changes. So you are at the start of a very significant ongoing process. So thank you very, very much indeed for your time, and obviously the time you took before this. And well, some of you I think we'll be seeing again quite soon.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Take care.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Cheers, Jim.
Thank you.
Right.